Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're calibrating the time machine for a very specific frequency. I want you to mentally transport yourself to 1995. The early 90s rave hangover is starting to clear. We are moving away from that raw, sweaty, illegal warehouse energy, the breakbeat hardcore, the early jungle sound, and we're entering a period where things start getting sharper. Cleaner.
It's such a pivotal moment. It's the moment the music grew up, or at least, the moment it decided to put on a suit and try to get a legitimate job.
We are working from a fascinating source deck today titled The Drum and Bass Jungle Story, Episode 3, Drum and Bass Evolution. Okay. It focuses specifically on that crucial 5-year window, roughly 1995 to 2000. And the mission today is to understand how a genre that started as one thing, jungle morphed into this massive umbrella term we know as drum and bass.
And to be clear right off the bat, this isn't just about a change in tempo or some marketing sticker. This is about a genre fracturing into completely different personalities. You go from a singular sound of the underground to suddenly having soulful jazz melodies on one side and, well, dystopian mechanical sci-fi soundtracks on the other.
It's massive divergence.
Yeah.
And that brings up the first big question I had while reading through the history here. Is drum and bass just a marketing rebrand for jungle? Or did the music fundamentally change? Because people use the terms interchangeably now, but looking at 1995, it feels like there was a very deliberate line drawn in the sand.
There was definitely a line, and the honest answer, which might frustrate some purists, is that it was both a rebrand and a musical shift. You just can't separate the sound from the politics of the time.
Okay, let's start with the politics then, or maybe the cultural pressure. Why ditch the name jungle? It sounds so evocative. It has history. Why run from it?
Well, context is everything here. Jungle was deeply rooted in Black British culture and the Caribbean sound system culture. That's its heart. But by the mid-90s, the mainstream media in the UK had latched onto the scene, and they weren't being kind.
I'm guessing we aren't talking about glowing reviews in the Sunday papers.
Hardly. There was a genuine moral panic. The media associated the word jungle with gang violence, drug culture, and aggressive behavior at raves. Whether that was statistically true or just sensationalism is, up for debate, but the stigma stuck. The word jungle became loaded.
So if you're a producer or club promoter trying to get your music into more upscale venues or onto the radio,
but then the word jungle becomes a liability.
A barrier.
Precisely, a barrier to entry. So drum and bass was adopted, or really pushed to the forefront, as a term that felt cleaner. It sounded technical. It was distinct from the ragamuffin vibes that scared the establishment. It was a term you could sell to a magazine editor or a super club owner without them, clutching their pearls.
It's almost like the genre did a corporate rebrand to get past the gatekeepers.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, I'm not a journalist. I'm a drum and bass technician.
That's a cynical way to look at it, but it's not inaccurate. It was a move toward professionalism. But, and this is crucial, otherwise we're just talking about marketing, the music did change to match the new name. The transition wasn't just linguistic, it was sonic.
How so? If I played a 1994 jungle track back-to-back with a 1996 drum and bass track, what's the difference?
The rhythm structure is probably the biggest giveaway. Early jungle is famous for the chopped M break. It's chaotic, syncopated, and very loose. It's all about the snare rolls and that funk shuffle.
Right.
As we moved into drum and bass, producers started straightening out the beat.
Is this what the source refers to as the two-step?
Exactly. It became a simpler, more driving pattern, kick, snare, kick, snare. It was less frantic, easier to mix, and honestly easier for a mainstream audience to dance to. It stripped away some of that chaotic funk and replaced it with engineered precision.
So jungle was the raw, jagged rock, and drum and bass was the polished gem.
Or the polished machine part? Yeah, because as this umbrella opened up, the genre didn't just get cleaner, it shattered into subgenres. This is the part of the source material that really stands out. How quickly it went from one sound to, 5 different sounds that barely resembled each other.
Okay, let's dive into those because the variety is insane. The sources outline a few distinct paths, and they are practically polar opposites. I want to start with the one that feels the most surprising, coming from that gritty, urban jungle background. Liquid funk.
The soulful side.
This seemed like a paradox to me. We're talking about a genre known for aggressive, high-speed breakbeats, and suddenly we're introducing jazz.
It creates such an interesting friction, doesn't it? Liquid funk proved that 170 beats per minute didn't have to be aggressive. It didn't have to be about the mosh pit or the screw face.
So musically, what defines liquid? Is it just, throwing a vocal sample on top of a beat?
It's deeper than that. The keyword is flow. It's defined by smooth, warm bass lines and rich harmonics. You have heavy influences from funk, obviously, but also soul, R&B, and jazz. And the structure changed. Instead of just a looping groove that rolls on forever, these tracks started having verses, choruses, and bridges.
They became songs.
They became songs, exactly. And the vocals weren't just sampled shouts of rewind anymore. They were melodic, soulful singing.
The source mentions that this shifted the whole use case of the music.
That's a great way to put it. Jungle was strictly for the rave. You experienced it in a dark room with a massive sound system, liquid funk. You could listen to that on your drive home. You could listen to it at an after party or a cafe or on your headphones while studying.
It made drum and bass home listening music,
which opened up the market to millions of people who were never going to step foot in a sweaty warehouse.
If I want to understand this sound, if I want the liquid starter pack, who am I listening to?
You have to start with LTJ Bookham. He's the pioneer of that intelligent, atmospheric, jazzy sound. He brought the musicality and the visuals, literally using images of space and nature instead of urban decay. But as we get deeper into this 1995-2000 era, the torch passes to guys like High Contrast.
The source highlights his track, Return to Forever.
A masterpiece. If you listen to it, it has this sweeping cinematic quality. It samples 70s soul but speeds it up in a way that feels euphoric, not frantic. Then you have Caliber, his track Drop It Down, as mentioned.
Caliber seems to get a lot of reverence in the notes here.
He's the producer's producer. His work is incredibly subtle. It's not about hitting you in the face with a drop. It's about these rolling, hypnotic grooves. He proved you could be gentle at high speeds.
And London Electricity, too. I know they were crucial for bringing actual live instrumentation into the mix.
Yes, treating it like a live jazz band session rather than just computer programming.
So liquid funk brought emotion and songwriting to the genre. It gave it a heart. But physics dictates that every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
And the reaction to the nice sounds of liquid was brutal.
We're talking about the dark side. Neurofunk and tech step. This feels like the evil twin.
It really does. While Liquid was looking at 1970s jazz and soul, Neurofunk was looking at science fiction and dystopian horror.
The descriptions here are just so vivid. Sci-fi D&B, dystopian soundtracks, music for a Cold War that never ended.
That's the vibe. Neurofunk is aggressive, techy, and heavily produced. If Liquid is organic, Neurofunk is mechanical. It reflects that late 90s anxiety, the Matrix, Y2K, technology taking over.
There was one technical element mentioned here that apparently defines this sound more than anything else. The Reese.
The Reese bass. This is a crucial nugget for the listeners who want to understand why it sounds like that. It originates from a Kevin Saunderson track called Just Want Another Chance, under his Reese alias.
And how do you actually make it? What is it?
It's basically two synthesizer waves, usually sawtooth waves, that are slightly detuned from each other.
Detuned meaning they aren't hitting the exact same note.
Right. One is slightly sharp, one is slightly flat. When you play them together, they clash. They phase in and out. And that creates this distinctive wobbling or tearing movement in the sound. It's just physics phase cancellation creates movement.
It sounds like the bass is alive.
Exactly. And in Neurofunk, producers took that sound and just distorted it, filtered it, resampled it until it sounded like a transformer tearing itself apart. It creates this sense of unease and power. It's not a warm hug like the liquid bass, it's a growl.
Who are the architects of this nightmare sound?
Ed Rush and Optical. They are non-negotiable when discussing this. The source specifically mentions their track, Wormhole.
Wormhole. Even the title suggests something sci-fi and disorienting.
And if you listen to it, it sounds exactly like that. It's dark, tunneling, mechanical, and relentless. They stripped away the human elements. No soul singers here, just machines talking to machines.
The notes also mention Bad Company UK, Tech Itch, Dom and Roland. It seems like these producers were obsessed with sound design above all else.
They were engineers as much as musicians, pushing the limits of what a synthesizer could do.
Now, the source also mentions tech step, and I feel like this is a nuance that might fly over people's heads.
Yeah.
How is tech step different from neurofunk? Or are we, splitting hairs here?
It is a nuance, but it's an important one for the heads. Think of it like this. Neurofunk is obsessed with the funk, the movement of that complex, tearing Reese bass line. It's wiggly. Techstep merges drum and bass with the minimalism of techno.
So it's colder?
Colder, more industrial, more stripped back. Techstep leans into that repetitive, minimal, cold techno influence. It's less about the wobbly bassline gymnastics and more about a hard stepping rhythm that feels like a factory floor. It's bleak, honestly, but in a cool way.
Okay, so we've got the soulful lovers listening to Liquid and the tech-obsessed sci-fi heads listening to neurofunk. But what about the people who just want to party? The people who aren't analyzing the mixdown or crying over a jazz chord?
Enter Jump Up.
The party subgenre.
Exactly. Jump Up is focused purely on the dance floor. It's not trying to be deep. It's not trying to be a sci-fi movie. It is trying to make you move.
What characterizes the sound?
Bouncy. That's the word. The bass lines usually use an LFO, a low-frequency oscillator, to create that wobble-wobble sound. It's catchy. The song structures are very simple. Intro, huge drop, breakdown, huge drop.
High energy, low pretension.
Playful. It's the sound of Friday night.
But the source mentions there's a bit of controversy here. Apparently, critics and the series producers called this clown step.
Yes, that's a dismissive term that popped up in the forums and magazines around the late 90s. Because Jump Up was simple and sometimes used silly samples like cartoon themes or hip-hop hooks, the serious music heads looked down on it. They thought it was dumbing down the genre.
Clown step, that's harsh.
It is, but the source makes a great point defending it. It calls it honest fun.
I like that.
And that's valid. Not everything has to be a deconstruction of dystopian society or a jazz fusion experiment. Sometimes you just want the bounce. You want that immediate dopamine hit.
Who are the key figures keeping the party alive in this era?
DJ Hype is a legend in this arena. Hazard, Mackie Gee later on. These are artists who know how to control a crowd. They prioritize the reaction of the raver over the approval of the critic.
So we have this explosion of subgenres. But the source material points out something really crucial. This wasn't just about musical styles changing because of vibes. The way the music was made changed completely between 1995 and 2000.
The production revolution. This is the how behind the what.
We're talking about the in-the-box revolution.
Correct. To understand this, we have to look at the hardware. In the early 90s, if you wanted to make jungle, you needed a room full of gear. You needed an Akai sampler, like an S950, a huge mixing desk, outboard effects units, miles of cables. It was expensive.
And I imagine it was limited.
Extremely limited. An old sampler might only have 10 or 12 seconds of sampling time memory.
12 seconds for the whole track.
For all your samples, that's why old jungle sounds the way it does. They had to speed samples up to save memory, which raised the pitch, giving us those chipmunk vocals. They had to be incredibly creative with limitations.
But then, toward the late 90s, computer processing power caught up.
Moore's Law in action. You get software like Propellerhead Reason, FL Studio, Logic. Suddenly, the entire studio is inside the computer.
In the box.
In the box. You could do almost everything on a screen. You didn't need the rack of expensive gear anymore.
How did that change the actual sound? I mean, I know it made it easier to make, but did it change the texture of the music?
Drastically. And this connects right back to our jungle versus D&B discussion. When you work in the box, you have total mathematical control. The sound became cleaner.
So we lost the grit.
To an extent, yes. We lost that rawness, that dusty sampled from vinyl hiss that defined early jungle. But we gained a massive amount of sophistication. You got perfect breaks, crystal clear mixes where every frequency sat perfectly.
It sounds like the difference between a grainy 16mm film and a 4K digital video.
That is the perfect analogy. And you saw this evolution in the drums specifically. In jungle, the amen break was king. You looped it, you chopped it, but it was still a recording of a drummer playing drums.
And in the software era.
Producers started layering. They would take a kick drum from one record, a snare from another, and a hi-hat from a drum machine, and they would build a completely new synthetic drum kit. They were engineering the drums, not just sampling them.
Which explains why neurofunk sounds so robotic. It literally is constructed beat by beat rather than played.
Exactly. That level of precision where every millisecond is quantized and perfect was only possible because of the shift to software. This allowed for the complex robotic rhythms of neurofunk and the polished radio-ready snap of Liquid.
It's wild to think that, Intel Pentium processors drove the genre split just as much as the culture did.
Technology and art are always intertwined. New tools create new sounds, and new sounds create new scenes.
So let's zoom out. We started with the question, did the music actually change? And the answer is a resounding yes. We went from a singular, raw sound to a diverse ecosystem.
An ecosystem is the right word. By the year 2000, drum and bass wasn't just one thing, it was a whole spectrum. You had the emotional depth of liquid, the technical aggression of neurofunk and techstep, and the sheer energy of jump up.
It seems like this era, 1995 to 2000, was really about diversification.
It was about seeing how far the tempo and the breakbeat could be stretched. Could it be pop? Could it be horror? Could it be jazz? The answer to all of them was yes.
And the source notes that this story doesn't end in 2000.
Oh, no. The next phase is going global. We're looking at labels like Hospital Records and Ram Records really taking off and the festival circuit exploding. But that is a deep dive for another day.
I can't wait for that one. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a thought. We talked about the shift from jungle to drum and bass, from raw to polished, from underground to professional.
It's the classic dilemma.
It is. And here is the question. When a genre moves from underground and raw to professional and polished, does it lose its soul? Or is that evolution the only way for it to survive and grow? Did the suit kill the vibe, or did it save the genre from fading away like so many other 90s fads?
That is the question. Survival usually requires adaptation, but the cost of adaptation is often purity.
Something to think about next time you're listening to a pristine liquid track or a gritty jungle classic. Thanks for diving in with us.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one.